Hey, welcome to Behind the Pulpit, the first episode of the year 2025. It's hard to imagine the fact that Y2K was 25 years ago, and we're a quarter of the way through this century. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Pastor Bob.
That's where you went, Y2K?
Who's also...
Man, you brought me back.
Getting older and older by the minute. How you doing, man?
I am hanging in there, Pastor Dave. It is hard to believe we are in 2025. We're delaying our launch for a couple weeks here in 2025, but we're finally back together.
Why do we delay the launch, Pastor Bob?
I don't remember. Last week we...
Bob was sick.
Just for the first week, but what happened last week? What was the issue last week?
Snow.
It snowed last week. Okay, so we'll blame the weather.
Snowed out of the studio.
Yeah.
Hey, we're glad to be with you. We're really excited about our show today because we got quite a bit to catch up on. We've finished one series. We started a new series. There's a lot of cool news stories that we wanted to get into that talk about how we can approach these things from a Christian worldview. We're going to do some theology sprinting. We're going to do some revival recaps. And we got the baptism waters flowing over here, Pastor Bob. It's an exciting time to be at NBC.
I feel a little damp right now, Pastor Dave.
That's right, man.
We should have brought towels with us
flowing.
Here.
That's leaking into the studio.
Awesome. Well, hey, why don't we just kick it off with the in the news stuff? You good with that?
That's good with me.
All right,
you're driving the ship. You want to go in the news? Let's go in the news.
In the news. Okay, so I don't want to do a whole month of news, right? But there's a couple things that we wanted to highlight that are somewhat urgent.
We talked about 4, so where do you want to start? You want to start with the big one?
Let's start with the big one.
Big one.
The big kahuna.
California wildfires.
Yeah, man. It's raging.
Have you been following this?
Every day and twice a day.
And apparently it's still not contained. It's been going on for almost a week, I feel like.
There's a couple fires that have really died down, but then there's a couple that are still rolling. And I heard there was not only natural causes for at least one of the fires.
There's some suspicion about arson. They're searching it out.
I saw this morning a guy was arrested. So
they arrested. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So it's a terrible tragedy. I mean, just think about. I think it's well over 10,000 homes have been totally destroyed, totally leveled because of these fires.
Pacific Palisades is apparently gone.
I was
just out.
Devastated. I was watching this one particular news coverage, and this woman was outside of her house, which was totally gone, and she's just in shock about the fact that her home's gone. And then she was pointing at the neighbors, and she was saying, my husband, he did so much work on this home, and then this is my neighbor so-and-so, and they're going through a hard time because their son is sick, and this is my other neighbor across the street, and they just went through a divorce. And she's pointing out all these leveled Jenga blocks that are just sitting on her street.
Just gone.
And it's just I've never seen anything quite like it.
Yeah. Well, and you've not been to Los Angeles, right?
I've never been that far.
Pacific Palisades is and Malibu right on the water. It's beautiful real estate.
The Palisade, is that like a technical term for a cliff structure?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because California along the coast has all these kind of cliffs,
right,
which makes it really beautiful.
Right.
But the Pacific Palisades, a lot of famous people live there, but a lot of ordinary people live there too. So this is kind of a mixed community, and it's just, I've seen pictures of it, just streets. Just imagine here in Basking Ridge, just streets of houses just burned. Nothing's left. It's crazy.
Were you ever over there feeling the Santa Ana winds yourself? Have you ever?
I was not there during the
that?
Santa Ana winds, but my wife grew up in the desert, so there's no fires up in the desert because I guess there's nothing to burn up there.
Yeah.
But so that's by the coast, but then what's called the Eaton Fire, just north of Pasadena, there's the mountains, the San Gabriel Mountains, and Palmdale, where she grew up, is just over those mountain ridges. So no fires over that way, but on the south side of the mountains, it's not good, and that's a more kind of middle class community. So a lot of people being seriously affected by this.
Yeah. If you're looking for a good charitable donation place to give, the Dream Center out in LA is doing really good work in downtown. There's a massive fire donation effort happening. It's been happening for probably a week now. That's one place where you can go to give some support But let's keep our brothers and sisters in California in prayer.
I saw an interview with Noah, you probably saw this, with the coach of the LA Lakers, JJ Redick, and him and his family completely lost their home, and he's talking about how devastating it is, to lose all the memories of years of marriage and parenting. And I thought, I've been seeing this a lot, like on social media, people in the comments, like, well, he made plenty of money during his playing career and his coaching career, so he'll have no problem. He's fine. And I was really shocked that there's so many people out there that, Bob, you mentioned it's real, it's nice real estate, it's wealthy people who live out there, but there's so many people who are just like, well, they all make plenty of money, they'll be fine. Well, like, not even taking account the however many memories and things that they've built in those homes over the years. And I think it's kind of, I was really shocked by what people were saying about this.
Well, there's a lot of criticisms about the way government officials have handled this. Things like the fire department budget was cut, and how they're handling the water and reservoirs. And apparently, a lot of these folks in some of these communities, their homeowners insurance policies were canceled like 4 months before this happened, and so their homes aren't even insured. So they're going to have to come up with rebuilding out of their pocket because California apparently caps. I guess how much you can charge people. So if you're in a very risky area, insurance companies usually would charge you more money to insure the home, but they can't. So they said, well, we're just not going to insure you then.
Wow.
So it's a tangled mess, and it is still burning. So we definitely should pray.
I heard Allstate pulled out of there, and it's just so this means the federal government basically is going to need to step in with the billions of dollars in terms of rebuilding effort.
Right.
So the work is just beginning. Let's pray for our friends down in California. Story number 1. Okay, story number 2.
Where do you want to go?
Well,
Meta, Joe Rogan.
I want to talk about Rogan. Okay, so
Let's get Rogan on.
Yeah, Rogan needs to have us on.
If you invited him onto our would he come on? That's
Joe
the question.
Rogan, if you're watching, we would love to have you.
Hey, if you watch that podcast, then you kind of are familiar with the vibe there. And it was Noah Graves who first kind of introduced me to Wes Huff like a month ago. It was at the staff Christmas party. And you're like, hey, did you see this thing with Billy Carson? Billy Carson's kind of one of those critical atheist type of content creators. Has some wild theories about Codex Sinaiticus and some other things. And Wes Huff just goes on this program. It wasn't a debate, but it was a conversation, and Huff just answered every single critique in such a gentle and respectful way. It was like, oh, this is how the Christian faith should be defended, just like this guy, right? So, of course, Billy Carson had been on Rogan, right? And so I think somehow Rogan saw this or got wind of it and invited Wes Huff, Dr. Wes Huff, onto the Rogan Experience at the end of December. It was just aired last week, though. 3 hours. I mean, you got to be really committed for this. I don't know if you watched any of it, but it's a commitment. I couldn't watch the whole thing at one time. But Dr. Wes Huff, what was impressive to me was
a PhD candidate. He's in a PhD yet.
Oh, not? Okay.
PhD, little c.
Oh, okay. Well, he's not quite finished then. All right. So Wes Huff, he's got his own website. I think it's wesleyhuff.com. So he goes on there, and Joe Rogan's taken him on this journey of questions about a variety of apologetics and philosophical and biblical topics. And I felt like, if you guys saw it, Wes Huff kept up with him really well with no notes. And he's just going, yeah, where you want to go there? I'll tell you about that. You want to go there? I'll tell you about that. You want to go here? And the amount of times Joe Rogan said, wow, was over 20 times, right? So you would just see Rogan
really
step back
good
and
Rogan
go,
impression.
Wow. And it was like, oh, wow. You know what? The Christian faith actually is interesting, and it is intriguing. Wes Huff did a great job. Yeah. So did anybody here in the room see that podcast?
I saw plenty of clips.
Well, that's why people are criticizing him, because Joe Rogan has, doesn't have a filter on his mouth.
No. So you got to be prepared for the foul language in that podcast.
By the way,
not
Pastor
by Wes
Dave,
Huff, but by Joe Rogan.
By the way, Pastor Dave, Wes Huff, if you've gone to his website, it is a plethora of charts.
I have already started downloading them.
I was thinking about you right here.
I
with
did not
all
even
these
know.
Look at this. You just go there. Infographic charts.
I know.
This is
my love language.
a wonderland for Pastor Dave.
Get
right
this,
here.
Pastor Bob. I used a Wes Huff chart in the September sermon in Revelation. I didn't know it was Wes Huff. There was that chart that had like the Mount Stupid. Remember that chart where it's like the effect where you think you know more about a topic than you do.
Okay.
The very first sermon in Revelation, and I looked at the bottom of my there's this little Wes Huff graphic there. I'm like, oh.
So he made all
did
of
that.
these. This is pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good ones.
Pastor Dave, I just had an epiphany.
Yes.
You should write a book called 365 Charts
Yeah, man.
for Everyday Christians by Dave Henschel.
It could be a devotional.
It's a
chart
devotional
for every day of the year. Devotional
it's a chart. And you come up with
ready.
365 charts. You probably have come up with more than 365
Not
charts.
quite, but I can get
Man.
there. I will get there. So this thing is 3 hours long. There's over 4 million views right now, and it's a popular show. It may be the most popular Joe Rogan podcast ever. It's
Rogan's just after Behind the Pulpit in terms of popularity.
That's right. We're a close second, though.
yeah. Well, definitely a good episode. Highly recommend that. That's a big news story.
That's a big news story.
Wes
Check
Huff.
Wes Huff, Joe
Check him
Rogan,
out.
Wildfires, Meta.
My friend of mine does. All right, one more thing on the Huff. So Wes Huff was talking about P52, and he gave Rogan as a gift his P52 facsimile, the little scrap from the Gospel of John. It's the oldest New Testament fragment we have. He's like, here's what I want you to have. So he gave him a gift. My friend also makes those facsimiles and sells them. And he now cannot keep up with the orders on his website.
That's
so
awesome.
all of a sudden, everybody's interested in this P52 facsimile fragment thing. So cool story. Okay, so I'm done with that. We can move on.
Wow.
What's
By
next?
the way, one more thing. So I saw Dr. Grotice, my old apologetics professor. He put out a prayer request for Wes because now he's going to get a lot of fame. By the way, I saw he's got a speaker request. I don't know how much he is.
No,
But I bet you maybe
Let's contact him.
everybody's going to be
2027 underground
seeing
session.
him now.
Get him now, Bob, before he goes
Contend
up.
2027.
Right, exactly.
Wes Huff, right
Lock
here.
it in.
We got. Look it up.
Get him
Look
on.
it up, Noah. All right.
Wes, we got a chair
pray
for
for
you,
him.
Wes.
Okay.
We're ready for you.
All right, Meta. So Meta is the parent company for Facebook, and if you don't know, the last couple of years they've been criticized for censoring and fact-checking a bunch of free speech, and Mark Zuckerberg came out over the week and basically said, we're not doing that anymore.
Parent company for Facebook,
Instagram.
Do they do TikTok? No, that's not them. They do something else.
I think they bought
Threads?
what's
That's another news
Threads,
story.
WhatsApp, Threads.
Yeah.
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
I think they bought WhatsApp.
Okay, so he's got curly hair now.
He
That was a
is-
new look.
He's apparently that, and apparently he does like karate. I mean, he's like a new Karate Kid, I think.
Okay, so he gets out there on his personal Facebook page and says there's like a new sheriff in town, and we're not doing stuff we used to do.
But said the previous sheriff basically called up and yelled at them and told them they had to take certain things down.
Right.
They capitulated. So
Right.
all
And
the stuff
even
that was
like memes. He was describing one particular meme, which was like, you know, that famous meme of who's the guy from Titanic?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio. He's looking at a TV, pointing, and he's got like a drink in his hand. That meme. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was like a meme.
No, from The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, that's
okay.
that's the shot.
Okay.
And there was some kind of meme of him, and it was politically minded, and they were not allowed to have that on Facebook, so he was taking it down.
So apparently
guess-
everything's being reversed.
He also, I
it
just
felt
saw-
like 1984, and then we kept on being told, no, it's not 1984. This is misinformation or disinformation. It's our job to make sure the truth gets out there and stuff like that. But now here we are, like 4 years later. Like actually, it was 1984. The government was telling us not to share this with you, and I feel a little gaslit, man, because they were kind of telling us for a long time, no, we're just taking down stuff that's not factually correct. Our fact checkers are on this stuff, but no, they were really selectively, posting stories that.
Yeah.
That was eye-opening.
What were you trying to say, Tim?
Zuckerberg also, this is an article from NDTV World. He ordered removal of tampons from men's bathrooms at Meta offices. He also recently discontinued its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and removed transgender and non-binary themes from its Messenger app. His change of worldview here, possibly, for Mark Zuckerberg.
I saw that tampon thing. That was a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so anyway. These are good things. I think free speech is a good thing. This reversal is a good thing. And if you feel a little icky over the last couple of years, maybe you should. Maybe you should.
Mm-hmm. So
the question is, if something happens
why
in the
the sudden
future,
change of heart?
will there be a change? Maybe people are just coming to their senses, Pastor Dave.
Okay.
Like maybe they actually believe this and they felt pressure, like the governmental pressure. Like we talked about the beast in Revelation.
The beast.
Maybe the beast has been slain. I don't know.
Mm.
Who knows? But anyway, that happened. That's in the news. Last one, which was maybe kind of odd, is that over the weekend, football playoffs, one of the games was delayed for a few minutes inexplicably. What was the
Steelers and Ravens.
Ravens, because a drone flew over top of the stadium.
So
I thought we were done with these drones,
I
Pastor
still
Dave.
see drones, not as much as in December, but I still see them.
There was like 2 weeks in
lot.
December. I saw drones over here all the time.
Right.
And then it
I
kind
feel
of
like
dissipated.
they've scaled back, but they're still up there. And we're told by the incoming president that we're going to find out what the drones were all about on day 2.
Day 2.
Right. Day 1,
Got to leave some
I
time for
got
the
to
inauguration.
swear in on the Bible.
Day
and
2 we'll find
I got
out.
some stuff to do, but day 2 drones.
So that'll be in the news if we actually find out.
Yeah, so
If only alien people
that's
were
like
right.
January 21st. So we're going to find
Set
out
your
soon
clock.
enough.
January 21st. Let's see if we find out.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Bet that particular drone was the Buffalo Bills getting some recon for their next playoff game.
Could have been. All right. Well,
the
is that enough
the Bills
news?
are in, right? They made the playoffs?
They made it.
Bills are in and won their
They
first round game
destroyed
against
the
Broncos.
Not looking good for the Broncos.
Oh, man, I'm behind. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's can we call it? That's good enough news for today.
All right.
We made up a couple.
Very good.
Just the big ones.
A couple other things we wanted to do. You want to go to the book war?
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm
Look at
ready.
this.
I should have brought my sword.
I'm bringing it back. I have the most 1970s cover that has ever been created on a
All
book
right.
to share with you today.
Let's see. Who are we trying to convince today?
It's Noah.
So-
it is Noah's week.
Noah, I know this is like so corny, but Lovelace was the author of Dynamics of Spiritual Life. Out of all of the influences on Tim Keller, he recommends Lovelace. So this is a record of the revivals throughout church history, as well as the ingredients and the causes and the effects of revival in church history. We've been recommending this.
There is an updated cover, by the way.
But look
You
at
can
this thing.
buy
This
it
thing
now.
looks like a combination of like a Pink Floyd album and
Wait, it was first in the
like,
70s, right? So that's
I
like
don't
an
know,
original
like
cover?
Mork and Mindy show or something like that. This is the corniest 1970s looking geometrically. Like, look at those triangles and pyramids and stuff like that. That is like, what is that? Pink Floyd? I don't know. So that's a cool cover, man. I don't know if you can get this anymore, but that's the one. He's got Spurgeon on there.
Are you
He's
trying to
got
recommend a book for Noah to buy that he
Edwards.
can't get anymore?
and he's got Wesley.
No, you can still buy it, but you will get a much better cover.
You can
much
only
more
get this
modern
kind
cover.
on the used section on Amazon. You wouldn't be able to find this new. So, Lovelace. Fun story. I was preaching about revival 2 weeks ago. Bruce Hildall's there.
Yeah.
Lovelace used to be on staff at his church. And Bruce is like, yeah, we used to call him Uncle Richie. I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny.
Uncle Richie.
So
My
then
goodness.
later on that Sunday, I was interacting with Bill Onzorg, who also was at that same church, Willow Grove Presbyterian in Scotch Plains. And Lovelace was on staff then. And Onzorg said, yeah, he was the youth pastor. And he used to come in at 5:30 in the morning and pray over the chairs where the students would be sitting. And Onzorg said, no wonder we had such an awesome youth group. So Richard Lovelace, of course, later on, he became a big deal. Professor Gordon Conwell.
Yeah.
And Tim Keller, if you want to know where he got all his stuff, he stole it from Lovelace. It's right here. So that's my book recommendation.
The question, did Tim Keller have an original idea, or did he just kind of synthesize everybody else's really good ideas?
He's a heck of a synthesizer.
He's
no,
a synthesizer.
no disrespect towards the great one, Tim Keller, but he gave props.
There you go. All right, my entry this week is going to go along with the fact that we're doing Sanctity of Human Life Sunday this coming Sunday, and a really wonderful modern work that makes it an incredible pro-life case is the book The Case for Life by Scott Klusendorf.
Love that cover.
Scott Klusendorf. It is a wonderful. Can we put these up side by side? If you had to vote just based on the covers, what would you vote for? That's the question.
Yours also has kind of
Retro.
a rainbow thing going on. If you twist the book,
I see. There it is. Look, it dances. The Case
yours
for
is
Life.
a disco book.
Look how clean and boring Bob's cover is. I love it.
That's very 2025. Equipping Christians to engage the culture. So he walks through the case. He walks through scenarios. He walks through, how do you address the things. And the major thing he says, and why I've been super interested in this recently, and we're gonna tie revival into societal impacts, and particularly the Case for Life this coming Sunday. First Choice Rep's going to be there. Is that these are worldview issues. Like, he talks a lot about the worldview underlying underpinnings that have to be there in order for you to have a certain take on this particular issue. So, the Case for Life, I would recommend you buy it, even if Noah doesn't choose it for his book this week.
How many pages?
This is about 400.
Okay.
355.
If you count the end notes and stuff, mine's 455.
Okay, so there you go.
It's a little long.
Yeah, I have a middle cover too. There's a blue cover before they have the newest one I see on Amazon is like yellow,
Yeah.
and splattery. But anyway, the Case for Life.
Dynamics of spiritual life. And
Life is in both titles right here.
Renewal.
All right, Noah, tee up our rev up the reveal here.
All right, well, we do have a very exciting revival event coming up this Friday. So when I was hearing Pastor Dave's book, I was thinking, well, this is going to be a chip shot for Pastor Dave. But then Pastor Bob came rumbling in with that book called The Case for Life. And that one's very interesting to me because I've always wanted to study more about that.
I think if there's revival, there will be a movement for life within the culture.
So today goes to Pastor Bob.
Oh, my goodness.
Tied it up!
I also thought...
How did this happen?
I also thought it was a chip shot for Noah. He starts talking about revivals, and I'm like, I text Noah, I was like, just let me know. And he says, Pastor Bob, and I was almost like, really? But a lot.
There you go.
Great work, Pastor Bob. I would have voted for yours just because of the cover. It's incredible.
Fought back, Tim. But next week is a new week. We're going to see what happens.
I'm going for a birdie or something next week. Chip shot. All right. Tied up 5-5.
Right. What should we do next, Pastor? Is there a chart? We have a chart sightings or no? No charts this week?
Sighting.
Oh, man. All right, we'll skip over that.
You kind of saw some charts on the
I did.
West
We did have the
charts.
West Huff charts, so
yeah.
we'll call that good for this week.
All right.
Chart setting light.
Charts.
So let's talk about the sermon. I think we're there.
All right.
Which one?
Well, we got two sermons. So
Okay.
we didn't meet last week because of the snow, so we had your sermon and my sermon. So
Okay.
why don't you talk a little bit about how we had to do a last-minute switcheroo.
You did.
Because I had a family emergency, and then you were able to step in. So you were gonna. I was gonna do week 1. You were gonna do week 2. So we wound up reversing that.
Right. Week 1. So what is revival? That was a kickoff Sunday. We basically used the most classic passage on revival in the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles 7:14. I realized that is a passage set in a different time, in a different context in the days of Solomon that had a very specific audience. However, I think there's principles in there that are transcultural that apply even in the New Testament. And we see the patterns of the same types of ingredients in revivals throughout church history. So I had 4 basic points. When revival happens, God's people must humble themselves. God's people must pray. God's people must seek God's face. And then fourthly, God's people must... Man, it's been a week and a half, and I forgot my own...
That's why you don't do
Repent.
4 points. You do 3 points.
Repent. Yeah. Turn from their wicked ways. Repent.
Can't remember 4 points.
Yeah. Hopefully I do better at repenting than remembering about repenting. So, it was a good... I think, where do we go after Revelation is over? It was like we went all the way to the end of the world and beyond, the new heavens and new earth. I think this is a good place to start the year. So let's get fired up about God's work inside of our own hearts and God's work in the world.
So the first
around
series
us.
is going to be about revival, and then our follow-up series before we get to Easter is going to be about resilience. So we got 2 R's starting this year off.
Very good.
Yeah.
So that's my kickoff. Give us an overview of your sermon from Psalm 85.
All right. So why don't I do this, and then maybe we can synthesize the 2 together. So the first week, the question was, what is revival? The second week is, how do we prepare for revival? And I actually use the passage I was going to use the first week, and then Dave did the Second Chronicles one, which is wonderful. Psalm 85. Psalm 85 is actually, they think, most commentators think, is set around the time of the whole Ezra-Nehemiah background, which we covered, was it last fall? The previous fall?
Fall of 23.
Fall of 23, right. So the building of the Second Temple, and if you remember that series, you'll remember that the people came back from exile. They're starting to build the temple under Zerubbabel, and then they get afraid. Like, there's some people that come in and intimidate them, and they stop building for like 20 years. And so people think this psalm is set in the midst of that the people of God are taking their eyes off of him, and they have to reorient themselves. So what we talked about was what does it look like to have a real revival at the beginning? And I used the image of the deep fake or the radio fake. Actually, I found that with the Orson Welles thing. There was a radio fake back in the day. Something that appears real and yet it's not. We talked a little bit about the surge in Bible sales. And we used that to set up this tension of is the revival really just based on an emotional high or a confessional reality? And then we started to parse that out. What are the conditions that need to be there? So the three conditions were this. Number one, we need to have a breathtaking awareness of God's holiness. Number two, you have to have a painstaking conviction of God's sinfulness, and then if those things are present as the revival comes, the result will be a liberating embrace of gospel power. And we used Psalm 85 to kind of frame that out, although some of those points come from Richard Lovelace in his Preconditions for Revival chapter in his book, and we just expanded on that a little bit in the message. So that's my overview of what I talked about.
Okay, but you forgot to mention the three little pithy clauses that you used. So the first
prayers?
one was turn us.
Oh, yeah. So I kind of, underneath these conditions, I tried to tie it with these kind of simple prayers that you can pray for revival. The first one was turn us, which actually is directly in the text in Psalm 85, verse 4. The prayer is restore us again, but if you look in the Hebrew, the word again isn't there. Literally, it can be translated turn us toward you. The second one comes from the prophet Haggai.
I think it's turn us and you're turning or something. It's a weird Hebrew construction.
So then the second one comes from the prophet Haggai, where he basically talks about how he's going to shake the world. And the second prayer was shake us, so turn us, shake us, and then once we get to the result, the prayer is free us. Turn us, shake us, free us. And as we're praying those, that can lead our hearts into a mode of revival.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Good. Well, we both really covered a lot of ground in terms of setting the scene here for revival. And I wonder, how did you go about choosing this particular sermon series? A couple of months ago, you had the idea to create a 5 or 6 week series. You chose a title. You worked with Mark on a graphic. Can you tell us a little bit about the vision behind the series?
Yeah, well, I think at least partially we felt over last year we were a long time in these long expositional series. I mean, we spent 9-10 months in Luke, and then we got to Revelation, another expositional series, and we thought, why don't we kick off the year with something topical? And for me, the beginning of the year is a natural time to talk about renewal, revival, this whole idea. And then revival has been a very big thing culturally speaking. A lot of people have been talking about it. So I thought, why don't we come up with just a 5-week series kind of doing some teaching on what is revival? What does the Bible say about it? How has it impacted the church throughout history? And how have people understood that? Mm-hmm. So that was at least partially what we were thinking. And then the whole idea of overhauling of the heart, has a both personal...
Tell me about the graphic.
Has a personal aspect, but also a corporate and societal aspect. So we're going to get to the corporate and societal aspect here in the next few weeks. So the graphic, this was Mark's idea, and I think if he was here, he would be telling you about how this guy, the dead guy, is like just, I don't know, kind of ash. He's frozen. He's a rock, but yet inside there's still a beating heart that needs to come alive. And then he did some squiggly lines there, I think, to illustrate the heart coming about. I like what he did with this. It's pretty. I like the color scheme here. pretty creative.
This is probably my favorite one of the Mark sermon graphics that I've seen.
Ever.
I think this is really.
Ever.
I think ever. This is
Wow.
This is number one for me.
Wow. Did
What's
you tell-
on the right side? There's another guy over there.
I think that's the alien they've been looking for with the drones. Extraterrestrial body over there.
I think that's so. What you're seeing here is, I would imagine, like Han Solo when he gets frozen in Star Wars.
Yes.
So the one on the right there is like that's what he looks like, and then this other one is he's starting to become unfrozen. He's starting to move. He's like,
Yeah. Well, I think and the
How's
subtitle
that go again there, Tim? What was it?
wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a one-time thing.
Well, I think I came up with the title, and Mark kept it. Sometimes Mark doesn't keep the titles; he switches it. But he kept my title, and then he gave that. I think he gave that that subtitle, "Discovering God's Power to Renew." And I think in terms of revival, and this is where I've come to. Like a lot of times, we think, oh, if we come up with a better strategy, or we speak something in a certain way, it's going to change people's hearts. But no, it's really God. It's the Holy Spirit that comes in and awakens hearts. I'm even thinking about some of those baptisms from yesterday. It's God who comes in and does the work, and we partner with Him, and we try to figure out what He's doing and jump on board. So that's at least part of what we were trying to do with the series.
On the one hand, yeah. In my message, I talked about a tension there. Like, yes, revival is a sovereign act of God. We can all agree with that. God is, I'm Reformed, but there's some sort of human component, right? Like, so we play some kind of role. Like the Westminster Confession of Faith says that God acts in His sovereignty, but that He sometimes uses secondary causes, and one of those causes that He uses for means are like human behaviors, human choices. So like we somehow get to play a role here, right? Like we do humble ourselves, we do pray, we do repent, we do seek His face, we do like yes, ultimately we're totally dependent upon God. So He does expect us to do something, right? So like,
Yeah, I don't think I'm disagreeing with that. I think I'm saying that a lot of times we take too much into our own hands and think,
Sure.
well, I'm clever if I do this clever thing. I put the smoke machine out there. Well, then all of a sudden it's
Revival.
Holy Spirit's going to come.
the haze machine's here.
I feel targeted.
Yeah, well, if the shoe fits, bro.
Listen, man, we bring
What can I
the
say?
haze
What can I
machine
say?
out for
Guilty
one
as
event a
charged.
year or two
Guilty as
events a year.
charged.
You guys remember when we tried to bring it out for the playlist series?
Yeah.
And then it actually started going off during communion, so you had the red lighting and all the smoke.
We thought the California wildfires had come to
I can
Basking
picture
Ridge.
people
People
complaining.
coming up
saying,
for communion, and Pastor Davis
Yeah.
is standing there with the red wall lighting and the smoke billowing out.
I know.
It looked like a scene out of the Christmas Carol.
The server to my right was Paul Achenbach, and he's looking at me like, "What's going on here?" I'm like, "I don't know, man."
We upgraded our lighting computer a few short weeks later.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen, but
Yeah.
I said from that moment on, we were never, ever, ever using.
well, my point is
taser during
not that
Sunday.
you can't throw creative elements in there, but it's just again, it's that's not the type of thing that Dave's talking about. It's the heart posture, the
Absolutely.
being obedient, and then you're kind of getting out of the way for God to do His work.
There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with good production and setting a mood or setting a scene. That's all fine and good. But I don't think we can ever replace what can only be attributed to the Holy Spirit with any human means in that fashion, right? So it's an exciting series.
Well, this was and this is sort of what I was talking about at the beginning with this that Wall Street Journal article that I was referencing. Why this surge in Bible sales? And they noted anxiety, a search for hope, but then they talked about this whole marketing thing, and that's sort of what I'm getting at here is marketing can be good. We can use what we have, but at the end of the day, we have to be careful that it's not like we're not obscuring part of the gospel message just because we think that it's slick enough for more people to come.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories about trying to be slick is from the great Tommy Lasorda, who was in the dugout coaching
The Slim Fast guy?
Oral Hershiser. Yeah. So Oral, in the beginning of his career, he was on the mound, and he was.
Do you guys know who Oral Hershiser is?
No.
I know the name. I'm not totally familiar with.
Dave's taking us back to the 70s today.
I love it.
He was a Dodgers pitcher in like the 80s, and I think maybe part of the 90s. I don't know when he retired. Anyway, so Lasorda is watching Hershiser get killed. These guys are hitting him like it's nothing. And Lasorda calls out from the dugout, "Hey, Oral, Babe Ruth's dead." And what he meant by that is, quit being so tricky. These guys aren't that good. Just throw strikes. And I think that's good advice when it comes to our role in terms of what we can do for revival. So I don't think people need us to be all slick and tricky. I think it's just the plain old gospel of Jesus Christ, his death, burial, and resurrection. And I think we can just throw strikes because that's what's really the power of God unto salvation. So, yeah, we can do our part, but ultimately we're dependent upon God to do his part. But he's going to use the means that he's given us, the ordinary means of grace, right? Like you said yesterday, it's cyclical, right? So these things keep happening because we have access to those ordinary means of grace, right?
Yeah. It's good.
So anything else you want to ask me about revival or the other passage? Or
Well, so you came up with 4 things, and you mentioned that it's you made this caveat. I know this is the Old Testament and all that. What did you mean by that? Does that mean it's not effectual? Is God working in different ways now because we're in a New Testament, the era of grace? Could you say a little bit more about that?
yeah, I mean, sometimes I think we should be careful about directly applying Old Testament passages as if they apply to us today. And it's a pet peeve of mine when people do that. So I didn't mean to do that. I tried to be specifically careful about that. But at the same time, the 4 points I just made, like humble yourself, pray, seek God's face, and repent, those are all repeated commands and exhortations in every single covenant era. Those are all repeated in the New Testament, right? So like James 4 says, humble yourself. Like we're told to pray without ceasing in 1 Thessalonians. So these are commands that the New Testament church is given too. So I used an Old Testament passage, but I think there was transcultural principles there that are found in the New Testament as well that also apply in revivals throughout history. So I think it's a valid use of the scripture, although sometimes people misuse it. And that's like the famous July 4th sermon where God is definitely necessarily going to drop down his blessing on the United States of America in 2025.
God's glory filling this land when in those times it was referring specifically to theocratic Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to
There's not an equivalent with that in the
not
United States.
exactly an equivalent. Right. No. Good.
All right. Good. So we're kicking it off. As I mentioned, this week we're going to be talking about sanctity of human life, and kind of focusing in a little bit on how revival begins in the hearts, begins in the church, but will ultimately spread to society, and some societal evils, I will say, will be curtailed. I think as revival spreads, and that's particularly seen in revivals throughout history. So we'll talk a bit about that this week.
Very good. And we've come to that part in our show as the morning rolls on here where we do a little sprinting. Is that right, Tim? Are we sprinting today?
You feeling up for it?
Is that right, Noah?
We'll see.
That is right.
All right.
I'm doing something a little unprecedented here since we've been
Oh,
off
man.
for a
I
few
can see the
weeks.
sweat beads forming on Pastor Dave's head.
I'm giving,
Unprecedented.
since we've been off for a few weeks, there might be a little bit of rust. So I'm going to give you the option here. Would you like a easy, medium, or hard level of difficulty of a theology sprint question?
This is gonna tell me a lot about the guts in the room.
I don't know. Sometimes if you say hard, it's actually not hard. So,
Oh, I think that's the
Hard
green
for
light.
one person might be not hard for another person. We'll go with hard.
We'll go with
And
the hard one.
sometimes the easy one is hard for them.
We forget
hard one's good.
Noah was just recently licensed
trick question.
as a minister of the gospel, so I think he might know what hard means.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
All right, we're going to the hard one then.
All right.
All right, here we go.
We could regret this. But
See if it's actually hard.
So the question is, will unsaved people be in hell for eternity, or will there be a point of annihilation where they cease to exist?
Yeah, I mean, you just covered this in your class, didn't you? With the so I feel like you have the answer, the in-depth answer at the ready right here.
okay. So typically in church history, there has been 4 different views of hell. And I think my personal view is the eternal conscious torment view, but that's not everybody's view. So what you just described is what some people think is the end, which is called conditionalism or annihilationism. So that's the belief that the soul is not inherently eternal, but that the soul has an expiration date, and that God will destroy the unbelieving soul at some point in time. So that's annihilationism. I have a hard time with that because of certain scriptures that speak about the everlastingness of the consequences, and whatever's happening to the believer is also simultaneously happening to the unbeliever. So the same exact language of everlasting, eternal, that's applied to the believer, say in Matthew 25 with the sheep and the goats or other types of judgment passages, the same exact language of everlasting is used of the unbeliever's fate as well. So that's a tough pill to swallow. Those are the two views I just described: eternal conscious torment, ECT, or conditionalism. There is two other views out there. So another view is the sort of metaphorical view of hell, that it's not literal fire, but that there's some sort of other punishment that's trying to be described by fire. And then there's the view of the Catholic Church, which is the purgatory view, which is more a view that says you don't go immediately to your destiny. You go through a fiery refining place, and that's a version of a fiery destiny for some people as well. But those are believers who go through purgatory, and then their sins are purged, and then they enter into paradise. Not unbelievers who are damned. So I lean towards eternal conscious torment just because, just exegetical reasons. But there are solid evangelicals who hold other views on this.
So is conditionalism the same thing as annihilationism? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So people like John Stott hold that view.
Yeah.
Others.
Right.
Yeah.
What I don't think is inside the boundaries of orthodoxy is something called universalism, which is the belief that everybody goes to heaven. I just don't think the warning passages in the New Testament can be squared with that belief.
Yeah.
So there's my answer. I don't know. That was a hard one. Yeah, you're right.
I warned you.
Well, it's a hard one to synthesize it in 60 seconds, but I mean, yeah.
It's hard.
Of course, one of those debated things about,
It's hard.
I thought you did a good job.
Yeah. So we did get into this a little bit in the eschatology seminar, but ultimately that's not an eschatological question. It's a soteriological question. So we're going to study this in another trimester, where we'll get into that topic of what happens to the unbelieving after they die. So we'll have to invite people to that class. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think you said it's the argument for the annihilationist is to say that the soul is not eternal.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's the God saves us for eternity, but the soul, like if you're not saved, if you're not regenerated, you just kind of cease to exist.
Yeah, when God destroys you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want a good book on that, there's one of those Zondervan counterpoint books called 4 Views on Hell, where you can see the pros and cons of each view. But I hold the ECT sort of loosely. I don't think belief in an eternal hell is necessary for salvation, but I do think it's an important exegetical issue that you need to work through.
Does that go in the concentric circles?
Like tier 2 or something? Yeah. So
it's funny that you asked that. I recently just saw someone on social media. He's this, I don't know, people might have heard of him. He's this really big bearded Swedish guy who talks a lot about church history.
What's his name?
Hold on. I'll figure it out. I'll know in a second. I'll send you the video too. But
right. While he's looking it up, why don't we move on to the body life as we come to a conclusion here for our time.
The big thing is this Friday. And I think Noah should take this announcement.
Nor. This is Nor.
What's
Nor
happening? What is Nor?
Nor.
Well,
like Noah's confused for something. Yeah, what is Nor?
Am I supposed to be there?
NOR.
Yeah, so this Friday, 7 p.m. on January 17th, we are having our next revival event. We're very excited. We're actually going to have, I think, about 8 baptisms, which is pretty crazy. There's going to be time for worship, prayer. It's going to be really cool. We've had a few of these in the past, and they've just been really cool opportunities just to get together and just call on the name of the Lord, especially as we're bringing in the new year right now in January. We're also encouraging people to invite people out to this. So if you have any family members, friends, neighbors, schoolmates, classmates, whatever it is, invite them out, bring them out. It's a little different of a setting than a normal Sunday morning. So we're really looking for a lot of people to come out to this and bring friends, just pack it out and call on the name of Jesus. So we're excited for this Friday.
It's going to be great.
Be there. Is that our only announcement, or do we want to mention?
No, we
anything
can.
else?
There's an event that's happening the following evening here too that a lot of people are signed up for, but apparently there's still room.
Pastor
Senegal
Bob,
dinner.
What is
Yeah.
that?
I don't have the graphic for it, but
Well, there's a Senegal dinner if you want to hear about what's going on in West Africa. We have a strategic partnership with some folks over in Senegal, and so we just sent a group back in November. They're going to report on the trip in more depth, and you're going to hear about all the cool things that are going on and some exciting projects we're planning to be a part of. So that's the following night, and then of course there's still spots for the Content Conference, so you can go sign up for that. We're nearing the 200 number, Tim, with a few weeks to go, but it's gonna be lit as the kids say.
All right. Well, good to be back with you guys here on Behind the Pulpit, and starting the year off right. So we hope you'll continue to like and subscribe our podcast. We got a lot more good content coming out for you throughout the year. So God bless you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
see you later, guys.